I've just bought 50 new orchids, and am I going to regret it? Have I brought something into my collection that I'm going to be sorry for? Have you ever bought a mixed lot of orchids, those specials that they offer, mixed lots, and you're never really sure what you're actually going to get? Well, that's exactly what I've done. And let's have a look at what it is and what I need to do to them to actually put them into my collection. Welcome to the Nature Company. Today, we're going to be looking at these orchids that I've bought, seeing if I can actually identify any of them, because they showed all these beautiful pictures, but none of them have come labeled. So that's the first problem that we've come into with this. But that's not the only problem. We're going to look at all the problems buying cheap orchids online and see whether it is really going to be worth it. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. That's the biggest problem with being an orchid addict. It's something you never fall out of. No matter how many orchids you've got, even once I repot these and put them into my collection, you're never going to notice that I actually added any extras to it. That's how many I've got already. What is it about these orchids that are on special that I can't resist? It's all those beautiful flowers that they show you and the prices that they offer. And you think, I just have to have them all. So you put in your order. We've got about 50 orchids here now that we've just received, and not a single one of them has a label on. Some of them I can sort of judge by the look of them as to what they actually are, especially because they did have flower pictures available online suggesting that these were the ones that were going to be in the mixed lot. But if we actually get any of those, we might be surprised. Let's have a look into how these orchids were sent to us. First of all, sorry, I should have shown you opening the box and everything, but I was so excited to get them. I opened the box and stripped them all out and put them on the table and realized actually I should be filming this to show you what the whole process is of buying these so-called mixed lots online. The order that we had put in was for 15 Oncidium and Oncidium hybrids and 35 Cattleya alliance. So we basically have pretty much what we had ordered in that fashion. But just a quick glance at some of these Oncidiums, I can already see some of these are not Oncidiums, they're actually Brassias, which I suppose can be excused to some degree. So that looks like Brassia brachiata. That looks like Sangwen. But let's not worry about the names now. Let's have a look at the plants themselves. We were able to order bare root or in pots. In pots, putting such a big order was going to be impossible. The weight of the shipping was just going to cost too much. So we decided to go for the bare root option, which is exactly what they've sent us, is all bare root plants. But not all the media has been removed. It looks like these haven't been washed post-removal from their pots. So some of them still look like they do have decent root volume to them and some nice new root growth happening. They seem to be fair size, relatively speaking, especially for the price that was charged. But some of them do appear to have been almost broken out of the pot. So perhaps the whole pot wasn't sent, it was just a piece that was broken off. But there still, I can't complain too much because it's fairly decent size for the price. Especially when you're buying these mixed lots, you get them at really, really, really good prices. But going to the Cattleyas, we start seeing a few problems. Some with no root growth, just a single pseudobulb and a new shoot coming up. I don't even see any root buds coming off the base of it. So this we could be landing up running into problems with. If we don't get any root growth, this new root, the new shoot could possibly not take. Here we have other pieces. We have 3 pseudobulbs with some nice strong shoots growing from them. A reasonable amount of root volume, that's still a reasonable root, but no root growth on the newest growth. Means this specific Cattleya is actually only going to root post-flowering. We can see the flowering sheath here, and this is empty, so this isn't going to flower. So we're just hoping that this will then root. If it doesn't, it's only going to root again next year, which keeping it alive for that long starts becoming problematic, especially if these roots don't last the transplant. We have other nice, quite strong pieces with a few of those really old back, tiny, small pseudobulbs. So this doesn't look like it was a division. It looks like it's a maturing seedling. So here again we have completely uncleaned. They didn't even bother taking off the old leaf sheaths from the plant. Unwashed roots. But none of that is terribly important. What is more important is things like the correct timing of repotting, which some of these aren't necessarily going to be. So if they are going to divide off pieces of their plant or send bare root plants, then they need to send plants that are going to root during the growing season. So that's another important point. If you are ordering plants online from overseas, ensure that you're bringing them in when your growing season is about to start, because you don't want to bring them into perhaps a cold season or a season where they're not going to start taking off or growing immediately, because you want them to be able to acclimatize to your situation and carry on growing. You don't want to bring them in and have a long period of dormancy before they actually then want to restart growing. So here we can see another piece with some, looks like drying out roots. Nice strong new shoot, and there we go, those nice fine new root growths. That's what you want to see. That way you know it's going to repot well. We don't worry about this purpleness to the stems, because this obviously just means it's been grown in highlight areas. We do notice that there is fungal infection on it. Whether it's been pre-treated or not is another story. We're not sure. That's why we're going to be looking at that shortly. But redness to the leaves and to the pseudobulbs is not necessarily a problem. It just means that these Cattleyas have been probably grown in highlight areas. If you are worried about them slightly, then just cut back slightly on your rhizome, and that way you can check if it's got that deep dark purple line around the outside. Then it has fusarium, which can also cause this. But these ones particularly, it doesn't look like that's the problem, especially when you can see the redness here, and then the line underneath the leaf sheath is green. Then you know it's just from highlight conditions. And then again, we get some tiny little pieces which really aren't worth much at all. The possibilities of them not surviving is actually quite large. Even though we have a nice new shoot here, perhaps the stress of being pulled out and sent across, these roots are completely dead. So we're just hoping that this is going to produce new roots off the new growth and not wait for flowering. So that specific piece, not such a good buy. Here again, we see all these old pseudobulbs. At least they left them on. But at least here we have some nice new growths on underneath. There should be enough energy in these old pseudobulbs to keep this alive long enough for rooting to take place, even if it is only in the following season. So this piece is going to be fine. You don't have to worry terribly much about some of these plants because they are incredibly hardy. So all you've got to do is check whether, or understand whether the amount that you've paid for them is worth what you've got. Because some people wouldn't pay anything for a plant like that, but if it is cheap, believe me, I'm going to buy it because I know I can get it to grow. So now that we've inspected through most of these plants, we've had a closer look at them, we do notice that a lot of them do have the telltale signs of fungus, and that we don't want to bring to our collection. All of these are going to be quarantined in a specific area to allow them to be treated, which I'll show you my treating now for these. They'll be treated several times before we actually take them to our main growing area. So before I even start planting these up, the first thing I do is do a contact fungicide. So just before the fungicide treatment, what we do is we'll just go through, remove any of that old debris from in and around the plant, those old leaf sheaths, any old dead roots. We make sure it's nice and clean so that contact fungicide can get to the entire plant, to every little nook and cranny available. This is always a delicate task. You have to be careful while doing it. Don't just go in there all guns blazing, because there are sensitive parts to the plant underneath these leaf sheaths. All of these little buds are all hidden away underneath these leaf sheaths, and we don't want to break any of them off. That's what's going to ensure the success of these plants. And we'll just take off those old roots that we don't want either. And we'll take our 70% isopropyl alcohol, give this a good spray. This is relatively effective against most lipid-based viruses. It's not going to get all of them, I'm afraid, but it will get a fair number. Also, once you've gone through and done your inspection of your plants and noticed it doesn't look like there's any viral infection, then you don't have to worry as much. If you do notice a virus infected plant or something that looks like it has been infected or suspicious, then separate that into a separate area altogether. Don't quarantine it with these ones, although these you're then going to have to be aware that possibly it has spread through them. So if you do have any tests available, test a few of them just to check. Otherwise, keep them all quarantined until you notice any signs, or if there are no signs, then you're just hoping that your plants are actually viral free. Also, we can see they didn't bother removing any of the moss that's been growing on top of the pots either. So, but that's not really a problem. We'll just clean it off. It will grow in and around the pots that we have already, but we've got it as well, so it's not going to be too much of a drama for us to deal with. We do actually notice that some of our Cattleyas especially do actually enjoy having this moss growing in and around the pot itself. So we just make sure that we still have enough air movement through into the pot if it is growing on top. That's one of the reasons that we make all those nice holes into the pots themselves. So also remember, before treating, if they haven't removed all of the media, remove all the media first. And wash your roots. Give them a little rinse down in running water or something, just to clean them up a bit. Even the Oncidiums and the Brassicas, just pull away those old leaf sheaths. Remember, at some points it's best to tear the leaf sheath in half and remove the two sections. That way you're less likely to damage any of those little buds at the base. And now getting to the treating. You're wondering why I've got this huge big basin here. And what we're going to do is we'll put in 20 liters of water. And we're going to be using a copper fungicide. I don't have any dendrobiums here, so the copper is going to be fine. Some of your oncidiums can be slightly affected with copper, but the majority of them are generally fine. So if you want to be sure, just treat a small section of your plant first to check how it reacts, because generally it's the thin-leaved orchids that are more affected, or that copper is more toxic to. So never use copper on dendrobiums, please. So always remember, read your mixing instructions, stick to the instructions that the manufacturer supplies. And the one thing about using this is copper oxychloride, is it is antibacterial as well as antifungal. So I'm going to be treating this for both any possible bacteria infections as well as fungal infections. Remember, use protective gear when treating your plants with any of these dangerous chemicals. I'm not going to be touching this stuff at all. I'm going to be using my tweezers here to put the plants in, and I'm using it as a dip. So I have a large bucket here now with my copper fungicide in it. And then we'll just be giving each one a little dip. We're going to let it stand for 30 seconds to a minute. And just make sure the plant itself is completely covered and all parts of it have been wet by this. If you are importing plants from overseas, you may notice that your plants look slightly dehydrated. That's not something to worry about particularly. It's all part of the process by which they are disinfected and treated before they're actually generally allowed into your country, as most countries have specific regulations as to what plants need to be treated for before they're allowed in. And part of the process is generally a drying process. These were not imported, these were all brought in locally. Also remember, when treating plants with any of these poisonous chemicals, do it in well-ventilated areas. That's one of the reasons I like to do it outside, is that way I'm not going to be exposed to too much of the fumes and that. Most of it's just going to be blown away. So what are your main takeaways from this? It's, if you're going to be ordering orchids online, generally buy from reputable growers. If you can, possibly speak to the grower initially and see if you can ask to make sure that your orchids are going to be labeled. That would always be beneficial. If you're unable to do that, the price of the orchids is going to be cheap enough that you really don't care what state they come in, just as long as you get them and you know you'll be able to get them back looking to what they should. But it's not always best to encourage growers who don't look after their orchids properly anyway and want to then sell them to the public. Now that these have all been treated, I'm just going to leave them to dry for the rest of the day. I'm not going to leave them out in the sun like this. The shade's going to come over just now and they're going to be shaded. They'll be left to dry overnight and then I'll repot them up tomorrow. So always remember, when buying orchids online, try to check whether the seller is able to take returns and whether they will actually return your money or refund you if you are not happy with the quality of the orchids that you get. Try and understand from them what their standards are and see whether they are going to line up with your standards. If they're not, rather don't purchase from them, purchase from someone else. If you're unable to contact them directly and they're not a reputable or known grower, then rather don't deal with them at all. perhaps you're just sending your money away and you're not even going to get plants like this. So always be aware that there are scams out there and that people will try and swindle you out of your money. And that doesn't matter whether you're dealing with orchids or anything else online. Always try and make sure you know where your money's going and that you'll get something in return. So with this orchid haul, I'm not ecstatic, but for the amount of money that I paid, I'm still happy that I did buy them. None of these are going back. I'll be able to recover all of these and get them to grow. There's just one or two that I'm a little bit worried about, that it was the wrong time of year that they were sent to me, and whether the roots are going to start growing now at this season or whether they're only going to grow at the end of their flowering season, which may actually only come again in spring or summer. So I may be sitting with a plant waiting for a long time to reroot itself. Some of these I can identify myself, but I know a lot of you aren't in the same boat. So try and get a seller that will tag and name all the orchids that they have sent to you. Because even still, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of these cattleyas, I couldn't tell you what is what. And a lot of these oncidiums are very similar, and you'd never be able to know what they are until they flower. There are a few little telltale signs that some might be brassicas or some may be a specific oncidium. But the rest of them, we're just going to have to wait and see the flowers. And for us personally, we generally don't like to send things back that we buy online. It's just personal preference. If we get something that we're not satisfied with, we rather just keep it and just never order from that person again. So we all have our own ways of dealing with different situations. In one like this, I'll probably never order from this person again, but I'm not unhappy with what I got. Just would have preferred it to be slightly cleaner and possibly named. I know that's not always possible when they send mixed bunches to you, but I should have asked first and seen whether they were able to do it. Because perhaps a lot of these people actually don't know the names of the orchids themselves. They are just doing this perhaps to earn money as a sideline, and they're amateur growers themselves, which it almost appears that this is the case here. And all is good and well in orchid land, and I've got more fun to have coming in the next few days, potting these all up and watching them grow over the next months. So, and if you have any orchid questions, drop them in the comments down below, or check that Buy Me a Coffee link. That Ed posts a lot of orchid information there all the time, and there's probably a lot of stuff that may interest you or may answer your questions. And if you find any of our information helpful in our videos or in that Buy Me a Coffee link and would like to show your appreciation, you can buy us a coffee down there too. Don't be shy, sign up, become a member, and grow like a pro. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.